back to What If Deku Had a Werewolf Quirk. In the last part, Deku had confessed his feelings to Uraraka. So let's continue from there. It's been approximately 3 months since his confession. Since then, him and Uraraka have noticed certain things about him. Deku has chalked it up to his quirk maybe maturing into its adult state. Uraraka thinks that it's basic instinct that he was not aware of before. That being because of the fact that Uraraka had noted that he called her a beta when he asked her out. But it was his quirk maturing, and with that came enhanced hearing, enhanced sense of smell, and other wolf-like instincts. As time went on, more traits started to show up inside of Deku, and Uraraka wasn't entirely sure exactly how to feel about it, but she resolved herself to weather out the storm of his up-and-coming quirk traits and stick by him. All because she loved him. She thought the world of him. But it was mid-morning on a brisk day when Deku woke up and found Uraraka in his arms. The adorable Mochi girl was snuggled up into his chest, happily dreaming away. He giggled and gently scooted off the bed, making sure not to wake her up or disturb her peaceful sleep. He then made himself a very basic and quick breakfast before going out. Ever since he had confessed to Uraraka, he's found himself returning to that same beach to do mid-morning exercise and calisthenics and to get used to the weird changes in his quirk. He wasn't entirely sure exactly to why these changes were happening, but the reality was that it was him experiencing a type of werewolf puberty, where he would essentially become more wolf-like, develop more like wolf-like tendencies like extreme loyalty, extreme sensitivity to his surroundings, and the like. And he experimented with these new traits while practicing his sense of smell and sense of hearing. Off somewhere to his left, he could hear the sound of sand crunching around him. He lifted his head and looked off into the distance, where he saw a very skinny, emaciated man approaching him. Deku was taken off guard by this, due in part that he's never really had a lot of people awake this early, and if they were, they would typically just be passing by. But the emaciated man seemed to be approaching him. Deku's guard was high. He was prepared for anything at this point, not sure whether to be ready for an all-out fight or if it was just his nerves playing tricks on him. The emaciated man finally reaching Deku bolsters out a shy, almost awkward chuckle as he noticed that Deku seemed to be uneasy by his arrival. He wasn't trying to be threatening, but he feels that he somehow set the boy off. He tried to assure him that he wasn't there to hurt anyone. He just saw him sitting in the sand and wanted to ask him a question. Deku, seeing that he doesn't seem to be a threat, alongside the fact that he's emaciated, doesn't really look like he can do a lot of damage. And that's when Deku takes a closer look at his outfit. The old man is wearing a t-shirt that looks like it's 3 or 4 sizes too big, along with a pair of cargo pants that also looks like it's way too big for him. And that the emaciated man has 2 long strips of blonde hair hanging down his face, with sunken eyes and a weirdly sharp looking chin. The emaciated man then asks Deku if he knows who cleaned the beach. Deku replies with, yes, he indeed knows who cleaned the beach. The emaciated man is happy to hear that someone finally knows who cleaned the beach. He tells Deku that he's happy to hear that, and that he would like to spread his thanks to whoever cleaned it, because he remembers a time in his youth where the beach was super beautiful. There would be couples coming all the time to have a nice tan in the sun, take a nice whiff of fresh air in the time before the once beautiful beach was riddled with garbage and became a public dump. The emaciated man hung his head low, disappointed that it had gotten to such a state. In his head, he felt like he couldn't do much since he didn't have a lot of time to dedicate to fixing the beach. But ever since he heard that the beach had been cleaned up, he's been coming by as often as he can to see if he can find the suspect who cleaned the beach. Deku then lets down his guard and says, I'm the one who cleaned the beach. The old man looks astonished. He looks surprised. He replies with, you're the one who cleaned it? All by yourself? Deku nods in response. The old man is astonished. He never expected one boy to clean an entire beach all by himself. Something in him tells him that this young man is going to be something really, really great. But he can't put his finger on it. It's almost like a sense of sorts. He detects greatness in the young man, but doesn't know exactly what. But the old man then chuckles and says, where are my manners? I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Toshinori Yagi. Deku, in response, says, my name is... And it was at that moment he realized he couldn't give the old man his given name at birth. So in the split second that he had, he came up with a faked last name. Well, sir, my name is Izuku Ulfer. The old man was taken aback at such a exotic name. He asked Izuku if he's from Japan. Izuku responded with yes, that he is, that his dad was not from Japan. Toshinori kinda wasn't sure exactly how to respond to that, but he put that aside and asked the young man what he was doing out on the beach at the moment. Izuku then responded that he was doing some light training and he was also doing a bit of aerobics, like stretches. All Might was amazed at how this young man was doing stretches. He noted that a lot of young people that he knew or had seen usually don't take the time to do stretches. They usually just work out and do nothing before or after, which usually leads to a lot of damage. But he then gave the boy his prompt by saying that he's very smart to be putting in such effort and consideration when training. He asked the boy if he has aspirations to be a hero. Izuku responded with yes, that he did want to be a hero, and that in fact he and his girlfriend wanted to enroll in UA. All Might, or Toshinori, as Deku knows him now, was baffled by the young man who just declared that he wanted to go to UA, especially since All Might was going to be a teacher there, though Deku didn't know that. Toshinori then told the boy that he will be rooting for him and that he hopes he gets in, before casually leaving. Deku kind of felt like the old man was kind of strange, yet familiar. And as the old man was walking away, Deku seemed to be blood, and called out to the old man, asking him if he's okay. Toshinori turns around and asks the young man what he's talking about. Deku responds with, he can smell blood on him. Toshinori was taken aback. He wasn't expecting someone to smell blood off him. He then told the kid that it was a old wound from his youth, that's what he gets for being reckless, before laughing it off and continuing to walk away. Deku processed the smell in his head. It smelled like old blood. It also smelled like something different as well, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Maybe not fresh blood, but old, like a scar, a deep-rooted wound. The smell was all over the man, but mostly on his left side. He brushed it off since the old man said that it was an old wound that he had received, and didn't put a lot of thought into it or worry. This leading to him getting up off of the sand and continuing with his calisthenics, then going for a jog before finally heading back to him and Uraraka's apartment. When he got back, he could smell the scent of Uraraka, reminding him of baked goods, sweets, peaches, almost like a sweet candy smell. The smell was intoxicating for him, and he couldn't figure out why. All of a sudden, he felt intoxicated by this smell. When he had entered the apartment and approached her, the smell was increasingly intoxicating. It effectively messing with his instincts, making him feel a bit weird. He wasn't entirely sure as to what was going on, but as he drew closer to her, he felt like his instincts were screaming at him, telling him to do something, but he wasn't entirely sure exactly to what they wanted him to do. The closer he got to her, the stronger this feeling got, before he finally knelt down next to her and looked over her body, finally laying his eyes in between the area of her neck and her shoulder. Something inside of him told him that he needed to bite her. An instinct super old, primal. Something about needing to mark her, needing to assert dominance, needing to drive away other males. He didn't know exactly to why this feeling was happening, but his body started to move almost like as if it was in a trance. He opened his mouth as wide as he could before finally biting down into the crook of Uraraka's neck on her right side. When she felt him bite her, she let out a very, I'm gonna say, sharp gasp, but in a good way. The sensation making her feel something that she didn't expect, but as he finished biting her neck, he seemed to lick the area where he had bitten her, almost like applying an antiseptic, trying to lick a wound. And right where he bit her, a weird pattern began to show up next to, in the exact spot where he bit her. The pattern looked something akin to a wolf paw. It confused him as to why, but he pushed that to the back of his mind for the moment. She looked at him and asked him what the hell he was doing, and he said he didn't know, but he felt this urge to bite her. Uraka was not entirely pissed about this. She actually kinda thought it felt nice, but she didn't want to say that to him exactly. But nevertheless, she asked him not to do that again. And he lowers his head, a bit ashamed of his actions, and apologizes to her, before suddenly turning into a smaller wolf and kind of cuddling up to her. After he had effectively cuddled up into her, he buried his head next to her neck, and in his werewolf or wolf voice, he said, "Please don't be mad at me." She kinda just giggled a little bit and told him that she could never be mad at him. Just don't do that while she's sleeping and scare her half to death. He tells her he won't before they both go back to taking a nap. I'm going to skip till a little bit later, whereas both Izuku and Uraka are at a mall, and while Izuku is in a clothing store looking at various things, Uraka slips into a different store with like punk rock clothes in it, and while she's looking around, she notices I'll say collar, a spiked collar that says "Bad Boy" on the front. Actually, you know what? I'll just make it a normal spiked leather collar. And the collar has a leash that comes with it. And while when she sees it, she thinks about Izuku and then proceeds to get a very, I'm going to say, mischievous look on her face, and she buys it. Then quickly goes over to one of those dog tag things and quickly has a tag created that says "property of Ochako," and attaches it to the leather spiked collar. She puts it all in a bag and then goes to find Izuku. When he sees her, he asks her what she bought in the bag. She tells him that she had bought him a gift. Izuku, having heard this, he gets a little bit excitable. He gets hyperactively happy that she had gotten him a gift. This leading to him hugging her, and as she's kind of hugging him back, she reaches up to ruffle her hands through his hair, and as she's scratching his head a little bit, two big fluffy green ears pop out from the top of his head, and a big bushy green tail pops out from his back. And Uraka, when she sees this, she's shocked and begins to laugh at the fact that now he looks like a werewolf person from a anime, like your typical wolf boy from an anime. And she starts to laugh at him, and he gets really embarrassed at the fact that she's comparing him to a pre-quirk era anime character, like a stereotype. And even though he's a little bit pouty, Uraka can obviously see that his tail is wagging back and forth because of the fact that she still has a gift for him that she hasn't exactly displayed to him, I guess. So when he asks her if he can have his gift now, she takes the opportunity to observe his ears and tail, and then with a very smug grin says, "Of course you can, sweetie. Open the bag." And she shoves the bag towards him. And as he's pulling out the contents of the bag, he's confused at like what it could be, because it feels like a piece of leather, right? So he thinks that it's just a typical belt that she got him that has something special about it. But when he pulls it out, he realizes that it's not a belt, it's a big, thick leather collar with spikes, and it says property of Ochako on the front of the collar. And his face instantly turns red at the fact that she would get him such a thing. And she approaches him and looks him dead in the eyes and says, "What's the matter, Zuko? Do you not like my gift?" She knows what she's doing. She knows what the hell she is doing right now. And he hates it because he knows that when she gets like this, he can't exactly tell her no. He will literally do anything she asks of him as long as she kind of gives him that, "Oh, come on, Izuku. Won't you do it for me?" kind of talk. So with a incredibly reddened face, he slips the collar around his neck and asks her if it looks good on him, in which she kind of turns a little bit red, but she steels herself for what she's about to do next, as she reaches into the bag and pulls out the leash attachment and clips it to a very tiny like metal piece that's hanging from the bottom of the collar, and says, "There, now it's complete." And when he sees that she has now attached a leash to him, he turns even more embarrassed at the fact that she has basically collared him like a dog, and is now pulling him around by a leash, like a subservient pet. That is before he enthusiastically scoops her up, looks her dead in the eyes, and proceeds to tell her, "You may have collared me, but don't expect me to play the sweet little innocent boyfriend for you, dear. Don't forget, I marked you. You belong to me, just as much as I belong to you." This makes her turn red. This makes her start to basically blush furiously, being in his arms and having him speak to her in such a way. He then tells her, "What's the matter, Ochako? You can dish it out, but you can't take the teasing back." I thought you wanted to play this little game, kitten. I guess I'm going to have to lay it on thicker. Make sure you really know your place in this relationship. She's turned beet red at this point. She is having a hard time handling what he is doing to her. And the way that he is authoritatively giving her playing the "I'm not your pet" card. You're mine. And she can't exactly argue that anymore because of the fact that she has officially lost this argument to him now. And she just reserves herself to surrender. I'm going to skip all the way to the UA entrance exam. Now, Izuku has been making sure to tutor Uraraka to make sure that she gets a very good grade on the written test. And since he's been working with her a lot over the past year, her martial arts abilities, or her ability to actually fight, is a lot better to the original, or to canon. I'd say that her martial arts prowess is up to her skill in Season 5. Not to where she knows the same techniques as Gunhead, but she's able to hold her own, and she knows how to basically give the hands. She's not going to go down without a fight. She's going to throw hands. And she's going to throw them with a lot of vigor. But since they have effectively been studying, both of them stroll up to campus very, very happy with themselves. And very, very, confident. That being that Izuku is currently carrying Uraraka with one arm, basically almost like a butler holding, in the same fashion where a butler would hold a towel over one arm. He basically has her like sitting on one of his arms as he carries her towards the front of, or into UA, while she is fiddling with his leash. Not too far back, you can see a boy with red spiky hair, a girl with pink skin and two little yellow horns, a boy with the face of a crow or a raven, and a girl with, I'll say, semi-abnormally big hands. Not too abnormally big, but also with her tongue kind of a little bit stuck out of her mouth. And they're all just kind of watching as these two absolute units just stroll up like they own the place. And they think to themselves, dude, is that the kind of confidence that you need to be in UA? And off a little bit farther out, a spiky blonde boy with piercing red eyes is observing the situation, and having seen the boy with green hair, is taken aback. He thinks to himself, no, that can't be him, can it? He went missing a long time ago. How would he be here? He thinks that he's just hoping, or his mind's playing tricks on him, thinking that he's seeing his childhood friend walking around, and proceeds to just go into the campus, pretending that he didn't see the green-haired boy. Now, after having completed the written exam, Izuku and Uraraka are sitting in the auditorium listening to President Mike basically talk about the different robots. The 1-pointer, the 2-pointer, the 3-pointer, and basically going over how the test is going to be displayed. As to where another boy with blue hair, square glasses, and a very high-strung attitude then points out, in the pamphlet that y'all gave out, there are 4 robots. Is this a mistake on UA's part? And you, pointing at Uraraka and Izuku, the both of you are being very, very inappropriate. This is a hero school. If you cannot behave accordingly, then you shouldn't be here. Obviously pointing out that Izuku is wearing a collar and Uraraka is holding said collar and kind of fiddling with the hand part of it. Izuku lets out a very low, monotone, or baritone growl that makes the area seem to vibrate under the base of the growl. The air seems to get thicker, and the blue-haired boy is then scared straight into sitting down, as President Mike, not having seemed to realize what's going on, yells out that yes, indeed, that there is a 4th robot, but that it's not really worth getting yourself all bent out of shape for, because it's a 0-pointer, and that it's better for them to just pretend it's not there and to leave. After having basically explained the rules to all the students, they all assemble at their respective gates. Though in this version, Uraraka and Deku are separated to different testing sites. When they learn of this, Uraraka makes sure to unhook Izuku's leash, that way it doesn't get in his way while he's fighting. So they split up and begin to wait at separate gates for it to start. While Deku is sitting there, he begins to look around at all the other students that are going to be attempting to pass this test. He sees a lot of them and begins to become fascinated with what they can do, with what the possibilities of their quirks are. Though he pushes that to the back and begins to prepare himself, stretching his arms, stretching his legs, making sure that he's limber for whenever the gate opens. That's when the gate opens and he instantly transforms into his hybrid form and sprints in, with most of the students seemingly yelling in what can only be described as being pissed off. That's when President Mike comes over the intercom and says, "Well, what are you waiting for? That student's already ahead of you. There ain't no countdowns in a real battle. Get out there!" And that's when all the other competitors start to flood into the fake city. But Deku is already creating his chaos. As he enters the testing site, he spots 3 one-pointers and quickly delivers a mighty slash to all 3, causing them to explode in the process before sprinting off and to find more. With his new sense of hearing, he's not entirely used to it yet, but he's gonna have to quickly adapt to the situation to make sure that it all goes over smoothly. With what he's able to pick up, he hears more coming from his right, and he ducks into an alley to face them. It being 2 3-pointers and 1 2-pointer, before also delivering mighty slashes to them, tearing them bit from bit. He goes from he starts with the 2-pointer, sinking his claws into it and tearing it into 2 chunks before quickly throwing them into the 2 3-pointers, what can only be assumed to be heads, to immobilize them through getting rid of their central motherboards, making them not able to function anymore. As he's turning around, another 2-pointer is coming at him and is in the process of swinging. Deku lifts his arms to guard, and they hit him for a massive blow. But Deku is able to recover and immediately jumps and bites off the 2-pointer's head before jumping to the top of one of the faux city buildings and begins to survey the area. He's able to spot more and more robots, and while looking, he sees a large group of them ganging up on one of the test takers. So he quickly jumps down and begins to make his way over there, and as at least 4 of the, I'll say 8 robots are about to strike this test taker, Izuku flies over them and shreds all 8, while the test taker is ducked down, crouched onto their knees to protect themselves. As the test taker looks up at Deku, he takes all the robots' heads and throws them aside before looking back and telling them that they're welcome before running off again. This test taker is, I'm gonna say, a weird little boy with balls in his head, and he's crying like a baby as Deku is running off to find more robots. So we're going to change the perspective to Uraraka's side for a little bit. Now, Uraraka is actually doing fairly well. Since she has a lot more combat skill, she's using her zero gravity to jump from from building side to building side to propel herself forward as she's touching more and more robots and sending them into the air. By the time that maybe I'll say 5 minutes have passed, she has managed to collect up to, let's see, 23 points. And since there's 15 minutes before the test, not in total with the test, I think, she is already off to a good start. She's making sure to also do her part in making sure that she helps others by also sending robots that would potentially be too much for them to handle into the air before having them travel to the ground and be smashed. As she's traveling through, she sees a girl with pink hair and horns begin to hose down a robot with what looks like a disgusting yellow viscous fluid. And then she sees that the robot begins to turn into a nasty sludge, before realizing that it could be like some kind of acid like quirk, which she's impressed by. And the way that the girl is like dancing while spraying it everywhere, almost like a sprinkler, also intrigues her. Uraka begins to think of more practical ways that she could use her quirk, but now is not the time. She'd have help from Deku to figure out different aspects that could help improve strategy with her quirk later. Until then, she had a test to pass. So she continues her way out and finds more robots to essentially destroy. Not all of them were destroyed by her gravity. Some of them she took out with her raw strength by kicking their heads off instead of making them float. She's taking a page out of Izuku's book and using what Deku calls beast martial arts, where he uses his overwhelming strength to destroy anything in his path. Granted, Uraka doesn't have that same strength, but she definitely has the basics of how his movements work down. That being that that his movements are quick, precise, and always aim for vital areas. Though I'm going to say that the mark on her neck also begins to glow a bit as she's moving, giving her more stamina, more flexibility, more agile speed. She doesn't know where this boost came from, but she's not going to complain about it. She likes the way it feels. It makes her feel powerful. It makes her feel confident. Like she's gonna always have Deku by her side when she's fighting, even if they're apart. So she goes through and makes sure to knock off the heads of a couple robots while she's at it. Decking in alleyways, climbing up buildings, scoping out areas. But it's at that moment that she realizes that a lot of the robots have been destroyed, and she needs to hurry up to get as many as she can before the test is over. And now we're going to skip back to Deku. By this point, it's about maybe 12 minutes in, and Deku has amassed a total of 122 points. The man is an absolute feral beast on steroids, if you will. He is an unstoppable force of nature, and he will do anything to make sure that he passed and that he could be in Class 1A with his beloved Uraraka. And as he's stretching to relieve the tension from his shoulders, back, and bones, to prepare to destroy more robots, he begins to walk the main street, and suddenly a very, very big vibration seems to travel through the ground, making the ground beneath his feet rumble. Everything begins to shake. And that's when he turns his head to the direction where he hears the most machinery. And there is a giant robot coming his way. He laughs as all the other participants begin to run away. He jumps up into the air and tears into its head, laughing all the while. "Is this the best you got, Teach?" Man, they must be really underestimating the students if they think that this can impede our progress. After tearing his way into its head, he begins to become a giant blender and blend every wire inside the faux robot, essentially making it powerless. And as he sticks his head outside of the robot's head to jump out and continue looking for robots, that's when he hears a noise. A noise that makes his stomach drop. A noise that makes every fiber of his being scream. He hears a very loud shout for help. But this isn't just anyone screaming for help. He hears Uraraka. He hears his girl screaming for help. He hears the sounds of people running away from another zero-pointer. And it doesn't sound like anyone's coming to her rescue. He becomes sick. The feeling in his stomach makes him feel sick, as he realizes that no one is moving to help Uraraka in the other testing site. He knows he can't go over there, but at this moment he doesn't care. He fully transforms into his full wolf form, quickly jumping towards the top of one of the buildings before jetting out, quickly rushing as fast as he can. And as he's going, he's growing bigger and bigger and bigger. His body is expanding exponentially. He's up to maybe, I'll say, 10 feet tall, 20 feet long. He is angry, and he is not going to let some stupid robot take his girl from him. He jumps the gap between his testing site and Uraraka's, almost coming shy of reaching the separate testing site. He lands on one of the buildings and sees the giant robot. He's quickly making his way there. He sees the robot lifting its arm, about to punch something. His stomach drops again as he realizes it must be Uraraka that it's about to hit. He jets forward as fast as he can, and as the robot is bringing its arm down to punch, he jumps into the air and clamps his jaw onto the robot's arm, causing it to recoil backwards from the momentum of Deku's leap and strike. This ripping off one of the robot's arms in the process, with the amount of force that he put behind it, before immediately jumping away from the limb and heading back towards where Uraraka is. He sees her pinned under some rubble, almost seemingly like she's about to pass out as well from the damage that she had taken from the rubble having pinned her down. His once green eyes begin to turn red with fury. He growls an unholy wail of wrath as he jumps towards the robot and sinks his teeth and claws into it, tearing it apart from the inside, ripping wire after wire, core after core, destroying it in every way for trying to hurt his girl, before finally tearing another hole through it, ripping its other robotic arm off, and potentially crawling to its head before tearing that off in the process, pulling the robot down with it away from Uraraka, before he finally begins to make his way over to her and nip at the back collar of her jacket, pulling her out from the rubble and scooping her onto his back, where he begins to walk to the entrance of the faux city with Uraraka in tow. She has passed out from fear and from the trauma of the robot dropping the rubble on her. He lets out a very low whine as he feels that he should have been faster, that he should have been there for her to protect her. He swears to himself that he will not let this happen to her again, that he will not let his beloved Uraraka be hurt ever again. As he reaches the front, the President Mike comes over the comm saying, "Well, that's it. Test over. If anyone is injured, meet a recovery girl at the entrance of your testing site." Izuku begins to shift back into his half form and carries Uraraka in his arms to recovery girl, dropping to both knees and asking her to please help her. Recovery girl looks at him and says, "You're not injured, are you?" He tells her no, that it's not him who's injured, it's her, and please to help her. Recovery girl stifles a small laugh and begins to say, "Such young youth. It is adorable how attentive you are of this young lady. Make sure you take care of her now," before she gives Uraraka a kiss, which begins to repair the damage along her body, with Recovery Girl removing her lips from Uraraka's forehead. Izuku remembers hearing about Recovery Girl and finds the weird way that her lips seem to expand and then stretch away from her body to be a bit disturbing. But he's just happy that his Uraraka is safe. He's happy that she's not hurt. It makes him feel incredibly warm knowing that she's not severely hurt anymore. He lifts her up into his arms, begins to walk away. That's when Recovery Girl looks at him and tells him, "Young man, you do know that you broke some rules jumping from your testing site to hers, right?" He looks back at Recovery Girl and says, "I don't care if I broke the rules, or if this means that I can't be a part of UA. She was hurt, and I was not about to let that stupid robot hurt my girl." Recovery Girl laughs a bit and thinks, "Man, this girl has herself quite the keeper. I'd be hard pressed to believe that he'd let anything happen to her." After she leaves her musings, she tells him that it shouldn't keep him from being a hero, but he's definitely going to have to deal with his homeroom teacher, being that she knows where he's more than likely going, and that his homeroom teacher is going to give him hell for this if he gets in. Deku stifles a laugh and says he'll keep that in mind as he begins to walk away with Uraraka cradled in his arms. Recovery Girl goes back to healing the other students while thinking that boy is quite interesting. He's quite fascinating. A very, very unique specimen that not many people would risk their hero career for another. And it brings a smile to her face to know that there's still some kind of good in the world and hope for the future. After taking Uraraka home to the apartment, he gently lays her on her bed and then begins to wrap himself around her with his tail and hold her tight. At this point, he's not a werewolf, but he's still displaying his wolf ears and his wolf tail that he discovered he can pull out at will. Whenever Uraraka had begun to scratch to run her fingers through his hair, and he begins to drift to sleep with her in his arms, just needing the contact to make sure to assure himself that she's not going to slip away from his fingers, and that nothing's going to happen to her. Nothing bad will happen to her as long as he's there with her. For the next, I'll say maybe week and a half, Izuku and Uraraka have been patiently waiting for their results for the UA test. Izuku and Uraraka being very nervous and very anxious to figure out if they passed or not. Deku knows that more than likely he passed, but he's afraid that that because of Uraka having been pinned under some rubble, it prevented her from getting enough points to pass. That's when he goes to the front door to check and see if any mail has come, and he sees 2 envelopes sitting next to the door, or actually in their little mailbox, and they have the UA seal put on them. He quickly rushes into the apartment and tells Uraka that they came. Their results from UA. Izuku and Uraka both hold their envelopes, and Uraka says that he should open, or Deku says that he wants her to open hers first because he wants to make sure that she got in first. So she does. She opens up her envelope with a disc, and a disc pops out, and it shines a great big hologram of All Might on it, with his signature laugh. I am here, coming to you through a hologram. Young Uraka, you showed exemplary work. Quite a fascinating display of power. You were able to manage to get over 65 hero points. And we had villain points. And we had a secret, I'll say a secret judging based on how many people you helped during your exam and saved. These would be rescue points. And of that, you earned another 64 points, giving you a total of 128 points in total. Congratulations, young Uraka, and welcome to your Hero Academia. And Uraka is jumping up and down in joy, and she jumps into Deku's arms and screams, I passed, Deku, I passed." He's so excited that he begins to lift her off the ground and shake her all around in joy at seeing that she had passed. But now it was his turn to see what his results were. As he had opened his, once again, All Might came back on, saying, "Young Midoriya, I am here, coming to you through a hologram. Young man, you showed true traits of a hero, though I don't know if I'd say that it was entirely correct of you to be jumping from one testing site to another, though the reason is very, very noticeable and is very commendable, young man. I'm proud to tell you that you had accomplished a record that only I had passed before. You, boy, have a entire total of 228 hero points. That being with your rescue points as well. And it is with great honor that I tell you, welcome to your Hero Academia. Izuku this time was happy enough to hear exactly what that he had passed as well. Now I'm going to skip to I'm going to backpedal this to during the exam. Basically give in a bit of note to what the teachers were feeling when they saw exactly what Deku could do. Now, All Might, seeing the screens and recognizing the green-haired boy, he expected a lot from him, but he was impressed by the display. All Might was truly impressed by the boy who had actually a lot of power and a lot of grit to be jumping from one testing site to another just to save a girl. Aizawa was very, very not exactly happy because he knew that they were going to end up in his class. And he could already feel the headache coming on. But he knew that these problem children were more than likely going to become great heroes if, or at least the green-haired boy would be a great hero if his desire to protect others went that far. Bringing a very subtle and tiny grin on his face. Nizu was laughing like a deranged psychopath at the prospect of this outstanding young man who had a lot of grit to be doing such a stunt. Midnight, the R-rated hero, well, she was doing she was making a lot of comments that would probably end her in jail if it wasn't for the fact that her coworkers knew that she was joking. To an extent, maybe. I don't know with her. She's just kind of really, really, I'm going to say deprived or something, because she's kind of weird. But nevertheless, all the other teachers are impressed by Izuku's display. They all wish to take him under their wing and be the one to nurture his skill, along with that Uraraka girl who seems to fight in a similar fashion, just with less hair and claws and less of a muzzle, or less of like a dog's snoot. They see a lot of promise in these two specific students. Though, I'm going to say that out of all of them, Hound Dog is the one who is taking the biggest shine to Izuku. That being because both of them are a subspecies of dog. Hound Dog is also a dog, so I guess he would be interested in Izuku and exactly what the boy can do. So obviously, Hound Dog wants to nurture Izuku's skill and see exactly how far the boy can go. But I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for listening, my adorable little viewers, and remember, the shadows are watching.